The scorched planet Cassitra 4, beneath layers of ash from a long-dead civilization. Black sands swirled in choking gusts, like the dying breaths of a planet abandoned by the stars. My boots sank deep into the heat-cracked dust, and with every step the signal tracker on my wrist pulsed harder, red and insistent. A faint life form. Weak, but still there. My name is Jalen Corrin, a signal scavenger. I track distress pulses, old detonations, sunken labs, anything that might hold a scrap of salvage or death with a high bounty. That day, I should have turned back the moment the ground began vibrating beneath me like a warning drum. But I didn't. There it was, half buried beneath a collapsed fuel depot, a vault hatch, its metal ribs cracked, greenish light bleeding from the seams. Inside, her, not human. Skin violet with a silvery sheen, ankles and wrists bound to a pulsating energy pylon. Eyes barely open, but sharp enough to slice air. She smirked the second I raised my weapon. "You're late. Thought they'd let me die before they sent anyone." Her voice was colder than the air outside. I didn't answer, just asked, "You sent the distress call?" "No, the locks did. When the host body reaches near fatal threshold, it auto-broadcasts. They built it that way. Asset protection." "What are you?" I frowned. "The nightmare your kind should have never unchained." She smiled faintly. I should have left her right then. But those eyes, they didn't belong to an enemy. They belonged to someone who once had freedom and had it ripped away. I didn't know why, but I stepped forward and began unlocking the restraints. The second my crowbar touched the energy clamp, electricity danced across my knuckles like living wire. I clenched my jaw, twisted hard. A loud snap, the shackle at her ankle came loose. She kicked it off like it offended her. I went for the wrist locks next. One more brutal wrench, metal groaned, popped. She stood, straight, bare. Nothing between her and me but the crackle of old static and the war in my chest. "You don't know what you've just unleashed, Jalen Corrin. Let's say I'm feeling stupid today." I exhaled. "My name is Xenoromance, and if you want to live, stay close." That's when the ground trembled again, clanging, metal, heavy steps, something, coming. The chase begins, smoke, tracking drones, a force that won't stop. I grabbed her hand and we sprinted into the dark. I should have left her chained, but I couldn't. There was something in her, something I couldn't walk away from. Inside the ruined corridors, flickering lights, the howling of drones in the distance. We ran through what used to be a military checkpoint buried under a civilization's last breath. The wall sensors began blinking red. These weren't warning systems, they were kill protocols. Triggered automatically when something tries to escape. "They're still tracking you?" I asked between breaths. "Not me. What's in my blood?" Nixara growled, her voice low, strained. "They want to extract it." I didn't fully understand, but I understood this. If she were captured, she wouldn't just be killed. She'd be dissected. I pulled her into an abandoned emergency pod chamber. The metal hatch slammed shut just as a fleet of drones whooshed past above us. Inside the cramped, dust-filled darkness, we stood still, breath ragged. "You're bleeding," I said. She let out a tired laugh, one hand pressed against the wall for balance. Her skin shimmered faintly, blood purple and glowing along the cracked lines. "I'm fine, just overheating." I moved closer, reaching out. The moment my fingers touched her skin, I recoiled. She was on fire. "You're burning up." "I'm not sick. It's a bioreactive response. When my body takes damage, the heat rises. If it doesn't get purged, it'll consume me from within." I paused. "What do you mean purged?" "There are two methods, deep restoration sleep, or a physical bond strong enough to regulate the energy." She looked at me then, slow and direct. "You up for that?" Silence. The room was tight, her breath in my face like a furnace. She wasn't seducing me. She was surviving. "You sure?" I asked, voice rough. "You're the one who broke the chains, Jalen. You're the only one whose hands didn't shake in front of me." She stepped closer, her hand cold on my hip, her body radiating unbearable heat. When her lips met mine, I realized this wasn't a choice. This was fusion, instinct. Fire consuming fire. Minutes later, the emergency lights flicker back on, patrol squads scanning the level above. We lay pressed against the floor of the pod chamber, breath slowly calming, her arm draped over my chest, her hair damp, tangled. But her skin no longer blazed. She was cool, balanced. "You okay now?" I whispered. "Stable, for now, but they'll return. They always follow the signal. I nodded. Then we move, but where to? Nyxara opened her eyes, no longer guarded but heavy with something deeper. To the place they locked me first. I have something to take back. What is it? I asked. The gene trigger. They sealed it inside a biocore vault. If I retrieve it, I'll remember everything, and I'll never need protection again. I smirked. I kinda like protecting you. I like seeing you try to keep up. The hatch opens. Blinding white light from the northern energy spire cuts across like a blade. We stepped out again into a world that still wanted us dead. But this time, something had changed. We weren't alone anymore. And now we both knew that power didn't just live in weapons or skill. It lived in what we refused to let go of. A blazing violet sunset spills across the northern edge of Casitra 4, where an abandoned Coalition research facility hides the last secrets of hybrid warrior genetics. We crouched behind a rusted slab of iron, tall as a rooftop, waves of heat from the exhaust vents blurring our vision. Not far ahead was the gate to Biocontainment Vault 07A, once a gene enhancement site for hybrid soldiers. This where they first locked you up? I asked, eyes fixed on the motion sensors rotating atop the guard tower. They didn't lock me. Nyxara replied quietly, her voice razor-edged. They manufactured me here, and when I started asking questions they wiped my memory, then sealed who I was inside my own flesh. Her fists clenched, knuckles bone-white. The one in charge here, Orvin Carr, used to call me his perfect creation. Then he sold me to the highest bidder. I stayed silent. I'd seen betrayal before, but I had never seen hatred as concentrated as the kind burning in her eyes. I take it you're not just here to recover the gene trigger, I said under my breath. She turned to me. Didn't blink, didn't answer. She didn't have to. The two infiltrate through the underground level, the storage halls cold as morgues, flickering fluorescent lights above. The southern access door still had power. Using a stolen code card from a drunk sentry, we slipped into the utility sublevel. The walls were smeared with dried blood. Biosyringes littered the floor like fallen needles from a nightmare. The data core was housed in the AI central vault. The smell of chemicals and old lubricant burned in our nostrils. On the central screen glowed a DNA sequence, non-human. It was Nyxara's. They preserved the entire activation sequence, she whispered. Just one command, and I'll remember everything. She stepped forward, pressed her fingertip into the bioport. A pulse of violet light surged through the room. The veins beneath her skin lit up like living wire, power tracing through her body in jagged streams. Her breath caught, then her knees buckled. I dove forward, catching her as her body convulsed. Nyx, no, don't stop. This is the price of truth. She screamed, but not from physical pain. It was her mind. Memory crashing back in waves, years of being dissected, programmed, forced to kill, each moment igniting like fire in her skull. I held her tightly, steadying her trembling body against my chest, and in the middle of her storm, I saw something I hadn't thought possible. She cried. They turned me into a tool. I've killed so many, on command. It's not your fault, I said gently. If it weren't for you, she whispered, breath shaking, I would have forgotten I ever had a name. Suddenly, footsteps echoing, the door slams open, floodlights blaze down on us. A voice rang out, familiar and sharp as steel. Well done, Nyxara. I knew you'd come back eventually. Orvin Carr, older now, silver-haired, wearing light armor, a long plasma rifle in one hand. I see you've reactivated your warrior core. Excellent. My merchandise is operational again. I rose and stepped in front of Nyxara, gun raised and steady. Get out of her sight. Oh, a human protecting a weapon? Orvin sneered. How quaint. Romantic delusion at its worst. She wasn't built to love you, Jalen. She was built to destroy. Then Nyxara's voice cut through behind me, low, steady, grounded like bedrock. You're wrong. She stood. Her eyes lit like twin novas, her hair lifted as if caught in phantom wind. Her body didn't tremble anymore. It crackled with thunder. I don't need you to exist, and I don't need to kill, to know I'm alive. She stepped past me, drawing two silver-edged blades from her waist, hidden until now. And Jalen? He's not protecting me. She smiled. We protect each other. The battle erupts, blades slicing through metal, blood spattering across the bioglass walls. She moved like fire. Orvin barely reacted in time. her blade slashed through his firing arm, blood splashing across the glowing DNA schematic behind him. I gunned down 2 guards who burst into the room. She advanced, knocked Orvin over the console, and drove her blade clean into the exposed seam beneath his collar plate. No words. Just a clean end, decisive, absolute, without regret. Crimson alarms wail across the core compound, automated defense systems activate, walls tremble, ceilings crack open. "We have to go!" I shouted, yanking Nixera's arm as slabs of concrete began to rain from the ceiling. "The exit's 1 level down," she replied, leading me through a side corridor where flickering lights sputtered like dying stars. We ran past shattered labs, bodies of scorched soldiers still smoldering on the floor. Every footstep echoed like a hammer against newly reawakened memories. My head throbbed, not just from smoke and debris, but because my heart wasn't beating just for my own survival anymore. I was terrified of losing her. She was no longer some alien being, no longer a manufactured weapon in someone else's hands. She was fire, a storm, a pain cleansed by blood and instinctive love. The 2 slide down an emergency chute. Dark and slick, spitting them out behind a distant ridge. We hit the ground hard, coughing in the dust. The research facility behind us exploded, fire roaring into the sky like a pillar of vengeance against a violet-gray horizon. I turned to look at her. Her face was streaked with blood and ash, hair disheveled, shoulder bleeding. But when she met my gaze, all I could see were her eyes. The eyes I feared I might never see again. "They're not chasing us anymore," I panted. "No, but they will soon. News of me spreads faster than fire," she said quietly. I let out a dry laugh and dropped onto a flat slab of stone, staring up at the night sky cracked like broken glass. "Do you think we'll die out here?" She stayed silent for a while, then sat beside me, her back against the rock. Her gaze drifted far beyond the horizon. "Yes, but if we do, at least it'll be while holding each other's hand." I turned to her. That sentence wasn't romantic. It was brutal truth, wrapped in something heartbreakingly beautiful. I reached out, touched her cheek. She didn't flinch. Instead, Nixera grabbed my wrist and pressed my hand against her fevered skin. "You could leave, you know. You're from Earth. No one's forcing you to follow me into this madness." "You're wrong," I whispered. "I'm not following you because I have to. I'm following you because I can't not." She closed her eyes. Her breath trembled, not from cold but from the terror that what I said might be real. I leaned closer, lips near her ear. "I used to live for money, for contracts, for missions, but the moment I shattered your chains, I stopped living for me." Nixera said nothing. She only opened her eyes, and for the first time there was no suspicion in them, no defense. She slid closer, slowly straddling my lap, one hand pressed against my bare chest where my heart was thundering like a war drum. "I don't know how to love, like humans do. I only know how to fight." "Then fight for me like you mean it." We crashed into each other. No logic, no hesitation, just bodies, need, all the lust and hunger pent up from every battle, every restrained breath, now unleashed. She rode me like she was riding the final wave, trying to drown every chain that ever bound her. I held her like a nuclear core about to erupt. Every kiss tore at a curse. Every thrust was a rebellion against the universe. We didn't make love gently. We made love like 2 creatures stolen from death, stealing moments before everything collapsed again. The 2 lie collapsed beside each other among the rocks, dawn creeping over the horizon of a distant world. She curled beside me, an arm draped across my stomach. I could feel every slow, steady breath she took, the first breaths of peace she'd known since I met her. "Jalen, yeah? If I die tomorrow, I won't regret a thing." I didn't answer at first. Then I turned, pulled her tighter to my chest. "We're not dying tomorrow." "How do you know?" "Because I haven't taken you home yet, and I haven't said those 3 words. She looked up, her gaze softening. "Say it." I leaned in, my lips brushing hers, and whispered, "I choose you." And she smiled, for the first time a smile that didn't hide a blade. At an abandoned supply station deep within a fractured valley, 3 days after the Biocore Center exploded. I wiped the sweat from my brow, gun still in hand, eyes locked on the rusted metal door ahead. "Think there's still a signal active in there?" I asked. "There is. And mercenaries too," Nixera replied calmly, her tone steady, her gaze unmoving. "They're waiting for us." then they'll be disappointed. She turned to me, and for a moment there was the faintest glimmer of pride, rare but unmistakable. As if she finally saw me not just as the one who freed her, but as her equal now, her partner, her weapon, her sin. The two stormed the supply post, mercenaries transmitting her location in real time. I kicked the door off its hinges, dust erupting into the air, and gunfire immediately tore through the silence. I rolled right, shooting down the first sniper aiming at us. Nyxera moved like a wildfire, barefoot, lightning fast, stepping over corpses without a glance. A blade flew from her hand, embedding itself in the wrist of the technician, frantically trying to upload data. "Did you block the transmission?" I asked. "Not yet, but—" She tilted her head, jamming a data extractor into the console. "We just got something better." The screen lit up, a full registry of everyone tied to Nyxera's creation, including prison labs, auction houses, and the highest bidder who purchased her 6 years ago. His name blazed across the display. Drake Malroth, warlord of Ascarion Prime. I looked at Nyxera. She didn't smile, but her spine straightened and her breath deepened. "I'm not running anymore." "No," I said. "Now we hunt?" They commandeer an old starship from an eastern maintenance bay and set course for Ascarion Prime. The ship was ancient, but the nav system still worked. We pierced the upper atmosphere, dodging interference zones and drifting through satellite-light debris, remnants of an old military grid. In the cockpit, she curled beside me, knees pulled up, her head resting on my shoulder. "Jalen?" "Yeah? You might die for me. Aren't you afraid?" I didn't turn to her. I just squeezed her hand resting in mine. "I am." "Of what?" "That I'll die before I get to say this." She lifted her head. "Say it." I turned to her. We were inches apart. "I love you." Silence followed. Even the stars seemed to pause. Then she reached out, slowly placing her hand over my heart. "Jalen, if anyone else said that to me, I'd kill them on the spot." I laughed. But the second her lips touched mine, I knew she wasn't joking. She kissed me like she wanted to carve those words into my soul. It wasn't violent like before. It was slow, deep, dangerous. Because when a warrior like Nyxera learns how to love, it's a love without escape. Days later, the two land on the outer moon of Ascarion Prime, preparing to infiltrate the fortress. I checked my ammo. She checked her blades. We stood in the shadows beyond the patrol floodlights. "Drake is dangerous. He buys everything he touches, even lives," she said. "Then we make sure he touches nothing." She met my eyes, nodded. "This time, I'm not killing for revenge." "Then why?" "Because he tried to own me. And I'll show him. Some things that won't submit are the things he should fear most." I pulled my mask into place. "And if he lays a hand on you again, I'll rip him to shreds before you can pull the trigger," she finished, her voice cold as a blade drawn at night. The two rushed through steel corridors, alarms blaring, lights strobing, Ascarion Prime's guards scattering like roaches. We weren't fugitives anymore. We were a sentence of death charged with ion fire. We were the storm warning of a crumbling empire. We were Jalen and Nyxera. Two souls with nothing left to lose, except each other. Deep within the central fortress of Ascarion Prime, in the highest command chamber, walls made of bulletproof glass overlooking the entire city, everything was buried in smoke and fire. The guards had been wiped out. The watchtowers lay in ruins, drones fell from the sky like insects with burning wings. And at the center of it all stood Drake Malroth, the warlord who once controlled an entire gene-trading empire, holding a glass of blood-red wine, eyes fixed on Nyxera. "You're still beautiful, even after being spoiled by human emotion," Drake sneered. "I used to think you'd always be the perfect weapon, and now, a beast without a leash? No, now I'm the one who decides who gets to live." Nyxera stepped forward, voice low and unshaking. I moved beside her, gun loaded and raised, eyes locked on him. "You've got one chance left," I said. "Get on your knees, hand over every genetic record, and tell me why you thought you could ever own her like a product." Drake scoffed. He sipped his wine. "She's not human. She was made, high-grade bioengineered asset, and you—" He looked me over with arrogant contempt. "You think you can love that? Something whose blood isn't even human? Something that once had a behavioral override chip in her skull?" Before he finished the last word, I pulled the trigger. The bullet grazed his cheek, shattering part of the glass wall behind him. Blood ran in a clean line down his face. That's your only warning." Drake laughed, but his eyes flickered with the first hint of doubt. He calmly set his glass down and, in a flash, drew a plasma blade nearly the length of his forearm. "If you want her, you'll have to kill me." And he charged. The duel explodes within the command room. Blades clashing, sparks flying, blood and breath mingled in chaos. I dodged the first slash, but couldn't avoid the kick that came next. My body slammed into the wall, my gun skidding out of reach. Drake spun his blade, aiming straight for my chest. But Nyxara lunged between us, intercepting the plasma edge with a short blade drawn from her hip. "You don't get to touch him," she growled through gritted teeth. The fight spiraled into a blur. I crawled toward the gun, blood leaking from my mouth, eyes locked on her every move. She fought like a storm, fast, ruthless, no wasted motion. But Drake wasn't weak. He had trained hundreds of versions like her. And then, one mistake. A spin, just half a beat too slow. Drake drove the blade into her side. I screamed. She fell to one knee. Purple blood dripped across the steel floor. Drake grinned, stepping in for the kill. I grabbed the gun. One shot, then a second, then a third. He collapsed, eyes wide in disbelief. He couldn't understand how someone like me, not bioengineered, not made to kill, could end him. I staggered toward Nyxara. She was gasping, eyes closed, hand pressed against the wound. "Don't," she whispered. "You need to leave." "Shut up." I gripped her tightly. "I'm not going anywhere. You're not dying. Not now." She laughed softly, weak but just as beautiful as the moment I first broke her chains. "You're an idiot, but I love that about you." I ripped a bandage from my pack, pressed it hard to the wound, vision blurring, whether from dust or something else I couldn't tell. "If you die, I'll chase you into hell and drag you back." "You think I'd leave you behind?" she murmured. The two escaping the fortress as Drake's self-destruct protocol activates. Fire consumes the night sky, the exhausted lovers stumbling through fields of ash. Under the blazing red sky, I looked at her. Her eyes shimmering, not from tears, but from freedom. We did it. She was no longer owned. I no longer had to run. And if the world still wanted to take her, it would have to go through me first. 10 days later, in an abandoned region on the edge of Solara Minor, where nothing exists but white sands, jagged cliffs, and wind, I placed a pot of water on a makeshift fire stove, but my eyes kept drifting toward the tent where Nyxara slept. The night wind howled through the cracks in the stone, cold enough to slice skin, but what made me shiver wasn't the weather. It was fear. Fear that she wouldn't wake up. Fear that the wound went deeper than flesh. And then, I heard it. Footsteps. Soft. She stepped out of the tent. Her hair fell loose down her shoulders, moonlight casting a glow on her face, softer than I'd ever seen it. She still wore the tattered clothes from the battle at Ascarion, but her eyes, they weren't fighting anymore. "What's that smell?" she asked, frowning faintly. "The strangest stew in the galaxy, but edible," I answered with a smile. She sat across from me, hugging her knees to her chest. "You cooked it?" "Yeah, because someone wouldn't let me call a medical drone or any auto system. Said, I don't trust anything that doesn't know pain." Nyxara chuckled, a small raspy sound, but warm, like the fire between us. "I trust you." I froze for a second, then looked at her. "Trust is one thing, but do you want to stay?" She tilted her head. "You mean?" "No more running, no more killing, no more reaching for a weapon at every noise." She was quiet for a while, the silence stretching like a blanket across the rocks and sand. "Maybe I'll always carry a weapon, but..." She reached out and laid her hand gently on mine. "I won't need to use it, if I have you." The two sitting beside the fire, her head resting on my shoulder, wind whispering through the stone like the universe's lullaby. We didn't speak anymore. We didn't need to. We had killed. We had run. We had risked everything for each other. Now just sitting still was enough to know we were alive because we still had each other. "Jalen?" she murmured. "Yeah?" "You once said you chose me. Now, I choose back." I turned to her. She took my hand and pulled it gently toward her chest, where her heartbeat thudded beneath my fingertips. "I choose to stay with you, even if the world falls apart." I leaned in, my forehead pressed to hers. Our breath synced, slow and warm. "You're a warrior." "I am. But to me," I brushed my fingers down her cheek and whispered, "you are home." Dawn breaking over Solara Minor, golden light spilling over two bodies curled beneath a silver blanket, in a place no one would ever find. No fortresses, no trackers, no bounty hunters. Just two hearts once pushed to the edge, now resting against each other like the last pieces of an unbreakable vow. And if one day war comes knocking again, it will face two souls who have nothing left to lose except each other.